Hello, and welcome to the Modern Horror Stories podcast with Dave, Jamie, and Alex. And today we're going to be talking about Ring, a 1998 Japanese horror movie. The film is about a cursed videotape that if you watch it, you'll die exactly a week later. The journalist starts to explore this, finds the videotape, watches the videotape, and then has a week to solve the curse. So, in a nutshell, that's kind of what it's about. We've all seen the film quite recently, and some of us have seen it in the past as well. So, based on our most recent viewing, let's show our scores of what we thought about this movie.
Oh Christ, Jamie, what's going on? Have you been watching a different film?
Wow. Okay. Well, I think, J Jamie, I think we should start with you. How do you feel about this film?
Okay. So there were things that I very much liked about the film. So I really loved the opening scene. I thought that was fantastic. There was this beautiful amount of playfulness and scariness that was sort of interwoven in the. So the scene starts with two teenagers talking to each other about this urban legend of this curse, and it feels like it's very lighthearted, and then it goes dark, and then light, and then dark, and I just thought that was really nice. And then the rest of the film did very little for me. So I felt like the most of the film follows this journalist who's trying to figure out the curse, and I just didn't believe she was that worried about any of this. And I don't know, like actually there was one bit that did get me, which was when the journalist first is about to play the videotape, and it's one of the only times in recent history where I've wanted to scream at the screen and say, "No, don't do it." And so I think they did that very well. But the rest of the film I found just a bit dry and not very engaging, to be honest.
Crikey. Okay. Alex, I think you've got to hold up our side here.
Yeah, I'll give it a go. As usual, I respect Jamie's opinion. I just disagree very, very strongly with it. So yeah, 1998's The Ring, based on the book, and I absolutely love this film. It maybe had diminishing returns the second time round watching this, just because the first time it was so shocking, it was so scary. But there were lots of things that I noticed this time round that I didn't notice the first time round, which is quite interesting. And maybe, Jamie, some of these will change your mind. One of my favorite things was the Anglicisms in the subtitles when there wasn't a way of translating something properly, just coming up with a very, very English word for it. One of my favorites was they just started snogging, then they died, which I thought was a brilliantly delivered line. They just started snogging, then they died. Great. I thought the use of silence in this film is absolutely brilliant, not just as a way of building up tension, but also just so we can allow these characters' thought processes to be completely clear to the audience. One of the reasons I just far prefer this above the American film. I mean, there are many, many reasons, but I think it's a distinctly Japanese idea. The the fear of tech, and not just the fear of tech, but specifically about the VHS, which is a Japanese invention, sometime in the 70s, I think. But I think it works so well as a Japanese film, and the American remake never quite hit me in the same way. I always felt it was sort of pushing the horror a little bit too far. But a great, real love of other horror films in the VHS collection that the I called him the B&B man in my notes. He's got the birds there. He's got a lot of different sort of not lots of nice little references to horror films in there. So yeah, I think it's a brilliant film. There's some dated stuff, but it's every time there's something dated, it's followed up by something genuinely terrifying. So I wasn't so bothered by some of the more dated elements.
I think I agreed that about the on rewatching, I've lowered my score a little bit. It's definitely a more powerful first viewing. And James, you saw the American remake first, I think.
I did, yeah. I saw that in about 2004, on a VHS tape, on a cathode ray TV. And that genuinely freaked me out. I was so scared. I really loved it.
I think that's got to make a difference.
Yeah.
The first time I saw this, it really did blow me away. Especially there's a big payoff. We're gonna try and be fairly spoiler free with this, but there is a big payoff at the end, which literally blew my mind. I'd never seen anything like it before at the end of this movie, and obviously that's going to diminish. Also, this film, I'd forgotten how much of a mystery it is, where the bulk of the film is just trying to solve this puzzle. And obviously, the first time you see that the unraveling of that is going to be interesting. The second time, maybe not so much. But I still think
Yeah.
there's a lot to offer. And also, I actually really liked the videotape itself, the footage of the videotape. I did find it quite disturbing. It didn't try to be scary because obviously on rewatching it, it's going to lose that. But for me, it did try to be a little bit odd and disturbing, and I thought it kind of captured that.
Yeah, I think it's the fact that it's so mundane, I think makes it creepy. I think if it had been images of stabbings and stuff, I would have just gone, well, that's an image of a stabbing. I could find that quite easily on the internet if I wanted to, if I was feeling very weird. But no, these sort of odd images of a woman brushing her hair and that sort of thing, yeah, really worked for me. But I've got a feeling they didn't work for Jamie. Jamie?
No, not at all. I think if it had just been the woman brushing her hair and the image of the well and nothing else, I think I would have thought that's brilliant. But the fact that it had this sort of mangled text that was sort of dancing around, which didn't, I don't think it fit the vibe of what we were seeing, of these disjointed moments of time.
But a piece of trivia that I found quite interesting was it's based on a book, which surprised me, but also it's not the first film version of the book, which,
Oh,
which really surprised me because this was my first incursion into kind of Japanese horror, and I felt like this was the birthplace of it. But obviously, it wasn't even the first version of the book.
I think there's an amazing sort of culture behind Japanese horror films, and often when they're translated into these American remakes, it doesn't quite work because they are so specifically built into their culture, and quite right. I think it makes the film all the richer for having those kind of links to folklore, and even though we don't get them on first watch, I think it's worth us, going back, watching the film again, doing our research on folklore, because this film is so informed by Japanese culture, and the American one feels a little bit soulless in comparison.
So to wrap up, I mean, I gave this an 8, and I would definitely watch this movie again. I think it's not a go-to movie, but it's a great movie. What do you guys think?
It really is. I think if you don't know what happens in that scene at the end, absolutely go and watch it. If you do know, or if you've seen the American remake, it is worth going to watch the Japanese version. I think it's a wonderful film. I think there's still a lot that can be kind of mined by an English audience, or by an audience that's not Japanese. Um, I think it's still absolutely worth a watch. And yeah, it's a bit dated, but it's still absolutely horrifying. So yeah, no, I'd absolutely go out and watch it if you haven't seen it before.
And James?
I well, maybe I'll try and watch it again and see if my feelings about it improve. But I found it a little bit dull, and I felt we were following the wrong characters, and yeah, just didn't land for me. So I'm not
That,
going to rush out and recommend it.
that's a perfect segue into tomorrow's podcast, where we're going to be talking about how we would make this movie better. So, so join us tomorrow for Modern Horror Stories podcast part 2 on Ring. Hopefully, see you there.